A brilliant 19-year-old student from New Delhi lies dead in a luxury Manhattan apartment, her lifeless body positioned carefully to look like suicide. What police initially dismissed as another tragic case of academic pressure would soon unravel into one of the most chilling predatory schemes ever discovered in New York's international student community. This is the story of how a young woman's dreams of success became a nightmare of manipulation, control, and ultimate murder. Welcome to True Crime Family Corner, where we dive deep into the darkest corners of human nature to uncover the truth behind shocking crimes. I'm your host, and today we're exploring a case that will make you question everyone you trust. If you're new here, please hit that subscribe button and stick with us until the end, because this story has twists that will leave you speechless. On a freezing March morning in 2024, New York police rushed to an expensive apartment on the Upper East Side. What they discovered would shatter a family in India and send shockwaves through Manhattan's tight-knit international student community. Ananya Sharma, a computer science student at Columbia University, lay dead in circumstances that seemed tragically familiar to overworked cops who'd seen too many young people succumb to academic pressure. But as investigators dug deeper into her digital footprint, they uncovered a web of secrets so dark and calculated that it would expose an entire network of predators targeting vulnerable young women from around the world. Ananya's final social media post, uploaded just 2 days before her death, showed her beaming in an upscale midtown restaurant. She wore a designer dress worth more than her monthly scholarship money, and her caption read simply, "Living the dream. Blessed life in NYC." What her loved ones back home didn't know was that behind that perfect smile lay a reality more sinister than anyone could imagine. Ananya had always been special. The daughter of a public school teacher and a hospital nurse in Mumbai, she'd earned a partial scholarship to study at the prestigious Columbia University. She was the first person in her family to study abroad, carrying not just her own hopes, but the dreams of an entire community that had pooled resources to support her education. She was brilliant, determined, and incredibly hardworking. Her father, Rajesh Sharma, would later say through tears during a video call interview from Mumbai, "Ananya always promised she would go to America and achieve something extraordinary. We never imagined this is how she would make headlines." When Ananya first arrived in the United States in August 2023, everything seemed perfect. Her grades were outstanding. She joined the university's programming club and formed close friendships with other international students. Her video calls home overflowed with enthusiasm as she described campus life, inspiring professors, and the endless opportunities New York offered. But beneath the surface, a problem was growing that Ananya desperately tried to hide from her family: money. Despite her scholarship, living in Manhattan was crushing her financially. The cost of everything shocked her. Rent for her tiny room in a shared Harlem apartment consumed more than half her allowance. Books, food, transportation, winter clothes suitable for New York's brutal weather. Everything cost far more than she'd budgeted. She started mentioning that things were more expensive than expected, recalls Meera Singh, her roommate and fellow international student from Nepal. But Ananya was proud. She didn't want to worry her family or seem like she couldn't handle independence. To make ends meet, Ananya took a part-time job at a campus coffee shop, which was permitted under her student visa. But even with the extra income, she could barely cover basic expenses. Watching classmates from wealthy families enjoy expensive dinners, designer shopping, and weekend trips made her feel increasingly isolated and desperate. It was in this state of financial and emotional vulnerability that she encountered the man who would destroy her life. The meeting seemed completely innocent. In October 2023, Ananya was studying in the university library when her old laptop finally died during a crucial programming assignment. Frustrated and nearly in tears, she couldn't afford repairs, let alone a replacement. She was approached by an elegantly dressed man who'd been watching her struggle. "Excuse me, but I noticed you're having computer trouble," he said, introducing himself as Vincent Sterling, a 45-year-old technology entrepreneur. Immaculately dressed in a tailored suit and radiating confidence, Vincent offered immediate help. "I know an excellent repair shop nearby. Let me take a look." What seemed like a kind gesture from a caring stranger was actually the first carefully calculated move by a professional predator. Vincent not only arranged for Ananya's laptop to be repaired the same day, something that normally took a week, but he refused any payment. "Consider it a small investment in education," he said with a warm smile. "I love supporting brilliant young people in their academic journeys." In the days following their library encounter, Vincent began appearing more frequently in Ananya's life. First came an Instagram message congratulating her on an academic presentation she'd mentioned. Then an invitation for coffee, as mentors do with promising students, at an upscale cafe on the Upper West Side. During that first official meeting, Vincent presented himself as a successful investor in tech startups, someone who'd built his fortune from nothing and now dedicated time to identifying and nurturing young talent. He displayed impressive knowledge of Ananya's field and asked thoughtful questions about her projects and career goals. "He seemed genuinely interested in my future," Ananya later told her friend Emma Liu. "Not like those guys who only want one thing." Vincent talked about internship opportunities, industry connections, how I could stand out in such a competitive field. Psychological manipulation often involves causing victims to question their own thoughts and reality over extended periods, and Vincent was a master of this insidious technique. He never made obvious romantic advances initially. Instead, he positioned himself as a mentor, a protector, someone who understood the unique challenges international students faced. Vincent was meticulous in his approach. He shared stories about his own supposed immigrant journey, though he was actually a third-generation American, and explained how he'd learned to navigate New York's elite circles. If you're finding this story as disturbing as I am, please hit that subscribe button. We're just getting started, and you won't want to miss what comes next. Throughout November, meetings between Ananya and Vincent became routine. Always in public, respectable venues, fancy restaurants, art galleries, exclusive tech networking events. Vincent gradually introduced Ananya to a world she'd never imagined accessing. Dinners at Michelin-starred restaurants, exclusive events at elite co-working spaces, casual conversations with other young entrepreneurs. For a young woman who'd grown up middle class in Mumbai and now struggled to afford student meals, this world was as thrilling as it was intimidating. Vincent always insisted on paying for everything, but elegantly, never making Ananya feel like charity. He had a way of making it all seem natural, recalls Mira, her roommate. Ananya would return home with new clothes, talking about important people she'd met, and incredible opportunities on the horizon. It was always Vincent introduced me to, or Vincent suggested that. Vincent's psychological manipulation was subtle but systematic. He alternated between building Ananya's self-esteem, praising her intelligence, ambition, and unique potential, and creating emotional dependence. He began suggesting that other students and professors didn't truly understand her value, that she was different and special in ways only someone with his experience could recognize. By December 2023, 3 months after meeting Vincent Sterling, Ananya's life had transformed dramatically. What began as occasional mentoring sessions had evolved into something far more complex and dangerous. It was like watching someone being swallowed by fog, described Emma Liu, one of the few close friends Ananya maintained during this period. At first, she was just excited to have met someone important. But gradually, she started distancing herself from all of us. The first major change was financial. Vincent began offering increasingly lavish gifts, always wrapped in seemingly innocent justifications. A new iPhone, because a tech student needs the best tools. An expensive winter coat, because I can't let such a talented young woman freeze in New York. Money for textbooks, as an investment in her brilliant future. Each gift came with rational explanations and Vincent's paternal smile. He had a remarkable ability to make Ananya feel special for deserving his generosity, while simultaneously creating an emotional debt she unconsciously felt obligated to repay. The turning point came in January 2024, when Vincent made an offer that would completely change their relationship dynamic. During dinner at a fancy Italian restaurant in Soho, he casually mentioned owning an extra apartment on the Upper East Side that was sitting empty. "Listen, Ananya, I've been watching how you've struggled with living conditions in Harlem," he said, his voice heavy with genuine concern. "That apartment is available. It has 24-hour security. It's close to campus. Why don't you consider moving there? It would be much more convenient for your studies." When Ananya protested that she couldn't afford Upper East Side rent, Vincent waved dismissively. "Don't worry about that. Consider it part of the mentoring program." Young talent needs the right environment to flourish. The apartment exceeded all of Ananya's dreams. Spacious, modern, with Central Park views. Compared to the cramped room she shared in Harlem, it was like a palace. Vincent arranged the move at January's end, insisting on paying for furniture and even a new wardrobe suitable for professional networking. With the move to her new apartment, Vincent subtly introduced rules and expectations that began isolating Ananya from her previous support systems. He suggested she spend less time wasting energy on people who don't understand her ambitions and more time focusing on real opportunities for growth. He never directly told her to stop seeing us, recalls Meera Singh, her former roommate. But suddenly Ananya was always busy with some important event Vincent had organized. She always had new excuses for not showing up to our usual gatherings. Vincent also began introducing the concept of professional discretion. He explained that given his status in the business community, it was important that his mentoring program not be misinterpreted by people who didn't understand complex professional relationships. Ananya should keep their meetings and her new living situation private, especially from her family in India. You don't want your parents worrying unnecessarily, he reasoned. They might not understand how professional connections work here in the United States. It's better to spare them the confusion. In February 2024, Vincent finally revealed what he'd been building toward. During an evening at his apartment, a Tribeca penthouse costing more monthly than Ananya's family earned annually, he made his first direct request. "Ananya, you're a beautiful and intelligent young woman," he said as they shared expensive wine after dinner. "And I'm a man who appreciates beauty and intelligence. We have a special connection, don't we? Why don't we explore that more deeply?" When Ananya hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with this new direction, Vincent immediately shifted tactics. He didn't pressure her physically, but emotionally. He talked about his investment in her, about incredible opportunities yet to come, about how special people like them had relationships different from conventional ones. "I'm not talking about anything crude," he reassured her, sensing her resistance. "I'm talking about a mature, mutually beneficial relationship. You continue focusing on your studies. I continue providing support and guidance, just with a more personal dimension." After that conversation, the dynamic between Vincent and Ananya changed forever. Though she didn't immediately agree to his more intimate requests, Vincent had planted seeds of a new reality. He began being more explicit about his expectations in exchange for his support. He established regular times for them to meet. Initially, these were innocent dinners, but they gradually evolved into expectations that she would spend entire nights at his apartment. Vincent developed an elaborate system of emotional rewards and punishments based on her availability and appreciation. She started mentioning that Vincent got upset when she wasn't available, says Dr. Lisa Rodriguez, a counselor at Columbia's mental health center that Ananya had briefly consulted in March. She described feelings of guilt when disappointing someone who had done so much for her. These are classic signs of psychological manipulation. Vincent also introduced surveillance disguised as care. He installed security apps on Ananya's phone, supposedly for her protection as a young woman living alone in Manhattan. He wanted to know where she was, who she was talking to, how she spent time when they weren't together. As February turned into March, Vincent became more direct about the transactional nature of their relationship. He began giving Ananya regular allowances, initially $2,000 per week, then increasing to $3,500, in exchange for her company and discretion. "It's just recognition for your time," he explained. "Successful people value quality relationships, and you deserve to be valued." The money was tempting for a student who'd struggled financially, but it came with invisible chains. Vincent established rules about how the money should be spent, insisting she buy certain clothes, frequent specific beauty salons, and maintain appearance standards he approved of. He also began using money as emotional control. If Ananya questioned any of his demands or tried to maintain boundaries, Vincent would become disappointed and reduce or completely suspend financial support, reminding her of all the opportunities she'd be missing. During this period, several people close to Ananya tried expressing concerns, but she'd become skilled at deflecting questions. When family asked about her new expensive clothes and improved lifestyle during video calls, she credited additional scholarships and freelance work opportunities. "We knew something was wrong," said Professor James Mitchell, her academic advisor, who noticed changes in Ananya's behavior and priorities. Her grades remained good, but she seemed distracted, stressed. When I asked if she needed support, she always said everything was fine, that she was just exploring networking opportunities. What no one knew was that Vincent had become increasingly possessive and controlling. He monitored Ananya's activities, discouraged relationships he didn't approve of, and gradually created a world where she depended completely on him for validation, financial security, and social guidance. By March 2024, Ananya had become completely entangled in the web Vincent had carefully constructed. What she didn't know was that other young women had gone through the same process before her, and that Vincent had far more sinister plans for their relationship's future. On March 15, 2024, just 1 week before her death, Ananya made a discovery that would completely shatter her perception of Vincent Sterling and put her in mortal danger. It began with a seemingly insignificant mistake. Vincent had forgotten his laptop at her apartment after one of his regular overnight visits. Initially, Ananya had no intention of invading his privacy. She just wanted to return the device when Vincent came back. But when a pop-up notification appeared on the screen showing a message from a young Asian woman with a profile picture saying, "I need to talk about the money you owe me," her curiosity was aroused. What Ananya discovered when she investigated further made her blood freeze. Vincent's laptop contained a meticulously organized folder titled Special Projects, which revealed the true scope of his predatory activities. The file showed that Ananya wasn't even close to being Vincent's first young international student mentee. In fact, she found evidence of at least 7 other young women over the past 3 years. All international students between 18 and 22 years old. All from middle-class families in developing countries. All initially approached under the guise of professional mentoring. There were photographs, text conversations, detailed financial records, and even intimate videos Vincent had collected without the young women's knowledge. Each relationship followed a pattern almost identical to what Ananya had experienced. The casual encounter, the trust-building phase, the gradual isolation, the free apartment, and finally the transition to sexual expectations in exchange for financial support. It was like reading about my own life, but multiplied by 7. Ananya later told Emma Liu during a desperate phone call. Every conversation, every gift, every promise. He had used exactly the same tactics with all of us. Even more disturbing were discoveries about what had happened to her predecessors. 2 young women had disappeared after trying to confront Vincent about the relationship. One had supposedly returned home due to family emergencies. Another had transferred to a West Coast university, but Vincent's records suggested something far more sinister. In text conversations with an unidentified associate, Vincent casually discussed methods for solving problems when his girls became problematic or uncooperative. There were veiled references to permanent solutions and necessary cleanups. One particularly shocking folder contained documents about Anna Volkov, a 20-year-old Russian student who'd been found dead in her apartment 6 months earlier, in September 2023. Officially, her death had been classified as an accidental overdose, but Vincent's files contained photos of her unconscious and references to experimental dosages of unidentified substances. Ananya also discovered that Vincent had installed hidden cameras in her apartment, cameras she never knew existed. He had recorded all her intimate moments, phone conversations with family, and even her private reactions of distress as she struggled with her situation. These videos weren't just for his personal pleasure. Vincent used them as blackmail material. There was evidence he threatened to send intimate videos to families, universities, and future employers if any of his victims tried to expose him or escape his influence. He had created a perfect system, Detective Michael Torres, who investigated the case, later explained. He specifically chose vulnerable young people from conservative cultures where sexual shame would be devastating. It was an almost inescapable psychological prison. After discovering Vincent's true nature, Ananya spent 2 days in shock, trying to process the magnitude of the situation. She considered several options: going to police, contacting other victims, fleeing home. But Vincent had been careful in his legal manipulations, and Ananya knew it would be her word against that of a well-connected and respected man. On March 17th, she made the decision that would cost her life: to confront Vincent directly and demand he stop his predatory activities. She called me the night before, recalled Emma Lou. She was determined but scared. She said she'd discovered terrible things about Vincent and was going to confront him. I tried to dissuade her, but she said she couldn't live knowing other girls would go through what she had. On the afternoon of March 18, 2024, Ananya met Vincent at his Tribeca penthouse. She had carefully prepared her approach, documenting all evidence she'd found and sending copies to Emma as a precaution. According to building security cameras, Ananya arrived at Vincent's apartment at 3:30 p.m., appearing calm but determined. What happened over the next 3 hours was only later reconstructed through forensic evidence and audio recordings Ananya had secretly made on her phone. Vincent initially tried denying the accusations, then downplaying them as misunderstandings. When Ananya threatened to go to police and expose the entire scheme, including her evidence about Anna and the other victims, Vincent's behavior changed completely. "You don't understand who you're dealing with," he said, his voice becoming cold and threatening. "I have connections you can't even imagine. I can make your life and your family's life very difficult." When Ananya stood firm in her decision to expose Vincent, he realized he'd lost the psychological control he'd always maintained over his victims. By 6 p.m., the situation had escalated to physical violence. Later forensic evidence showed signs of struggle in Vincent's apartment: overturned furniture, broken glass, and most significantly, evidence that chemicals had been forcibly administered. Vincent had prepared a syringe containing a lethal mixture of synthetic drugs similar to those found in Anna Volkov's system months earlier. When Ananya tried to leave the apartment, he forced her to inject the substance, hoping her death would look like another accidental overdose by a stressed international student. The last recordings on Ananya's phone, discovered days later by investigators, captured the terrifying final moments of her life. Her voice growing weaker from the drugs, she still tried to bargain for her life. "Please, Vincent, my family. They don't know where I am," she whispered as he carried her unconscious to a car. Vincent had planned to dispose of Ananya's body in her own apartment, creating a narrative that she'd committed suicide due to academic pressure and financial problems. He'd done this before, and it had worked perfectly. But this time, something went wrong. Maybe it was the excessive drug dose. Maybe it was Ananya's unexpected physical resistance. Or maybe it was simply karma finally catching up with Vincent Sterling. When he arrived at Ananya's apartment at 9:45 p.m. that night, she was already dead. And for the first time in his career as a systematic predator, Vincent had left enough evidence for the truth to eventually emerge. On the morning of March 19, 2024, at 7:43 a.m., an anonymous call came into 911 reporting a possible overdose in an Upper East Side apartment. What appeared to be yet another tragic case of a young person under academic pressure would soon reveal itself as something far more sinister. Detective Michael Torres, a 15-year veteran of the NYPD specializing in crimes against vulnerable youth, was assigned to the case. At first, everything pointed to suicide or accidental overdose, he recalls. Young international student, financial pressures, substances in her system. "We saw similar cases every month." But something bothered Torres from the moment he arrived on scene. Ananya's apartment was too luxurious for a student with financial difficulties. The clothes in her closet cost thousands of dollars, and there were subtle signs that someone had tried to clean up the scene before police arrived. The initial autopsy revealed a lethal mixture of synthetic fentanyl and ketamine in Ananya's system, drugs she'd never used before, according to everyone who knew her. Even stranger, injection marks on her arms suggested forced administration, not self-administration. The position of the body was also wrong, explains Dr. Sarah Kim, the medical examiner responsible for the case. If someone voluntarily injects themselves with a fatal overdose, the body falls in a specific way. Ananya was clearly positioned after death. The scene investigation also revealed evidence of cleaning. Industrial cleaning chemicals had been used recently, and several surfaces showed signs of having been scrubbed hard. Whoever found Ananya first had tried to erase evidence. The first major clue came when investigators found Ananya's phone hidden under her mattress, a strange place considering she always kept it close by. More importantly, the device contained audio recordings she'd secretly made in the days leading up to her death. The recordings revealed conversations with Vincent Sterling, including explicit threats and evidence of blackmail. But when investigators tried to locate Vincent at the address Ananya had provided, they discovered that no Vincent Sterling lived there. That's when we realized we were dealing with something much bigger, says Torres. Through analysis of security cameras and verification of financial records, police discovered that Vincent Sterling was actually Thomas Mitchell Morrison, a 47-year-old man with a complex criminal past and multiple false identities. Thomas had grown up in a dysfunctional family in Queens, suffering childhood sexual abuse by an uncle who was later discovered to be a serial predator himself. This had created a disturbing pattern where Thomas became both victim and perpetrator of a cycle of abuse. He'd studied psychology at university before dropping out. Thomas understood deeply how to manipulate psychological vulnerabilities, explains Dr. Robert Kellner, a forensic psychologist consulted on the case. He wasn't just an impulsive predator. He was a calculating professional. As the investigation deepened, detectives discovered that Thomas operated an international sexual exploitation and human trafficking network disguised as a mentoring agency for international students. He had partners in at least 7 countries, including South Korea, India, Brazil, Nigeria, and Ukraine. The operation worked systematically. Recruiters identified bright young people from middle-class families in developing countries who were applying to American universities. They provided free consulting to help with applications, even offering financial support for application fees. Once the young women arrived in the United States, Thomas or his associates would make contact, always under false identities as successful businessmen interested in supporting young talent. The rest followed the pattern Ananya had experienced: trust, dependence, isolation, exploitation. The investigation revealed that at least 23 young women had fallen prey to Thomas's scheme in the past 5 years. Some had been murdered when they tried to escape or expose him. Others had simply disappeared. Their families back home told they'd transferred schools or returned due to emergencies. Thomas Mitchell Morrison was eventually arrested and charged with multiple counts of murder, human trafficking, sexual exploitation, and fraud. His trial revealed the full scope of his predatory network and the systematic way he targeted vulnerable young dreamers from around the world. Ananya's death, though tragic, ultimately saved countless other young women who might have fallen into the same trap. Her courage in confronting her predator, even though it cost her life, exposed a criminal network that had operated in shadows for years. If this story has affected you as much as it has affected me, please consider subscribing to True Crime Family Corner. We tell these stories not for shock value, but to honor victims like Ananya and to help others recognize the warning signs of predatory behavior. Remember, predators like Thomas Morrison are masters of manipulation. They prey on vulnerability, isolation, and dreams. If something seems too good to be true, it probably is. Trust your instincts, stay connected with friends and family, and never be afraid to ask for help. Ananya Sharma's story is a reminder that evil often wears the mask of kindness, and that the price of trust can sometimes be everything.